Right now, your gas is expensive. Food costs more. Your flights cost more. Interest rates aren't going down. Do you actually know why? Because on February 28th, 2026, something happened that most Americans still haven't fully processed. The United States launched the largest military operation in the Middle East since the Iraq War. We're talking 900 strikes, 12 hours. One night, we killed Iran's supreme leader, a man who had ruled that country for 35 years. We blew up their nuclear facilities. We destroyed their navy. More than 50 Iranian warships are sitting on the ocean floor right now. And Iran's response? They shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That one move cut off 20% of the world's entire oil supply overnight. The International Energy Agency called it, and I'm quoting directly, the greatest global energy security challenge in history. Gas prices hit $4 a gallon by March 31st, a 30% surge in weeks. The World Bank says energy prices will surge 24% this year, the biggest spike since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. And as of this week, May 2026, Trump just said the ceasefire is on massive life support. His own aides are telling CNN he's seriously considering going back to war. So what actually happened? What's really going on right now? What comes next? For the war, for your gas prices, for America? I'm breaking down everything. Real sources, no spin, no clickbait. This is the Iran war. Explained completely. To understand where we are, you need to understand how we got here. I'll keep it tight. 1979. Iran's Islamic Revolution overthrows the US-backed Shah. Iranian students storm the American embassy and hold 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. That was the moment the relationship broke. And it never recovered. For the next 4 decades, sanctions, proxy conflicts, and a slow nuclear standoff. 2015. The Obama administration negotiates the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. Iran agrees to limit uranium enrichment. Sanctions are lifted. It's not perfect, but it's diplomacy. 18. Trump pulls out. His argument: the deal doesn't address Iran's missiles or its support for groups like Hezbollah. Iran starts enriching uranium again. 2025. By May 2025, Iran has stockpiled over 408 kilograms of uranium, enriched to 60% purity, just below weapons grade. Enough, the IAEA warned, to build multiple nuclear weapons if further enriched. Then in June 2025, Israel launches the 12-day war, striking Iranian military and nuclear facilities. The U.S. joins in, hitting the Natanz nuclear site. A ceasefire ends the fighting, but the damage is done, to Iran's defenses and to any remaining diplomatic trust. By early 2026, the picture for Iran was grim. Economy strangled by sanctions. Inflation over 40%, nationwide protests erupting in January 2026, regional allies degraded, and the nuclear talks in early 2026 had completely collapsed. An Iranian senior official had privately said, "If I were defense minister, I would build a nuclear bomb." Trump had a choice: negotiate with a weakening regime and give them sanctions relief, or strike while they were most vulnerable. He chose to strike. On February 28, 2026, and in the middle of active negotiations in Oman, Trump authorized Operation Epic Fury. Here's what happened on that day, and it's stunning. At mid-morning on February 28, 2026, U.S. and Israeli forces launched nearly 900 coordinated strikes across Iran in 12 hours. The targets: Iran's air defense systems, taken out first ballistic missile storage and launch sites, nuclear facilities, including Natanz, hit multiple times military command centers, and Iran's leadership, directly Ali Khamenei, supreme leader since 1989, the man who had run Iran for 35 years, was killed in an Israeli strike on Tehran. His daughter, son-in-law, grandchild, and daughter-in-law were also killed. The Iranian defense minister was killed. 4 top intelligence officials, the chief of staff, the head of Iran's nuclear research organization. multiple top generals. In the first wave alone, Iran's entire top military and political leadership was essentially decapitated. Trump told the Iranian people hours after the strikes began, "When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations." He was betting the regime would collapse. It didn't. Iran's response came fast and massive. Missiles and drones rained on Israel, U.S. military bases across the region, and Arab Gulf states. The UAE reported intercepting 550 ballistic missiles, nearly 30 cruise missiles, and over 2,200 drones. Since the conflict began, Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG complex was hit, causing a 17% drop in Qatar's gas production that analysts say will take 3 to 5 years to fully repair. Asian LNG spot prices jumped 140%, and then Iran played its biggest card, closing the Strait of Hormuz. Only 15 ships made it through the strait in the first 10 days. Hundreds of oil tankers were stranded. The world's biggest energy supply disruption in recorded history was underway. The VTOL CEO at one of the world's largest oil trading firms said the war will result in the loss of 1 billion barrels of oil production. By March 31st, gas hit $4 a gallon in the United States, a 30% jump in weeks. Here's a part of this story that almost nobody is talking about properly. When Khamenei was killed, Iran needed a new supreme leader fast. The regime couldn't afford to look weak. On March 8th, just 8 days into the war, Iran's clerical assembly of experts elected Mojtaba Khamenei, the dead supreme leader's 56-year-old son. This was controversial, even inside Iran. Reports say it went against the elder Khamenei's own written wishes. Senior political figures inside Iran opposed it, but the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, wanted Mojtaba. And in a country at war, the IRGC's word carried the day. Who is Mojtaba? Trained by hardline anti-Western clerics, former IRGC member played an active role in crushing Iranian protesters in past crackdowns, recently embroiled in a corruption scandal, rarely speaks in public. Almost nothing is known about his real positions. Trump said publicly, "I distrust him." But here's what the Atlantic Council, the major U.S. foreign policy think tank, says. Mojtaba will likely be a continuation and potentially more extreme version of his father. And here's the dark irony. The war that was supposed to topple the regime may have actually strengthened the IRGC's grip. Analysts say Iran is moving toward what they call IRGC-Sistan, a military state where the IRGC holds the real power, with Mojtaba as a figurehead. One former IDF expert told the Times of Israel, "If the war ends tomorrow, we will have operational achievements to point to, but they will be eroded. This regime, if it remains, will rebuild its nuclear capacity." And Iran still has 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium stored deep underground at the Isfahan site, which U.S. bombs haven't reached. After 40 days of fighting, a temporary ceasefire was announced on April 8th. Pakistan brokered it, but calling it a ceasefire is generous. J.D. Vance called it a fragile truce on the same day it was announced. Here's what the U.S. demanded in its 15-point proposal: complete end to Iran's nuclear enrichment, zero enrichment, permanently dismantlement of ballistic missile program, reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, end to funding of Hezbollah, Hamas, and other proxy groups, removal of all existing enriched uranium from Iranian territory. Here's what Iran demanded: a permanent end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon. The U.S. naval blockade lifted immediately. All frozen Iranian assets returned, worth billions. Recognition of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, war reparations paid to Iran. These two lists don't even live in the same universe. The nuclear issue alone is a canyon. The U.S. wants zero enrichment forever. Iran says enrichment is a sovereign right, non-negotiable. Iran offered a 5-year limit. The U.S. reportedly wants 20 years minimum. The ceasefire has been violated by both sides. The US and Iran have literally fired shots at each other in the Strait of Hormuz since the ceasefire began. Iran has launched 16 missile and drone attacks on Iraqi Kurdistan since the truce took effect. And Netanyahu made things worse by publicly declaring Lebanon, where Hezbollah is based, was not included in the ceasefire. Israel immediately launched what Lebanon called its heaviest strike since the war began. By May 10th, Iran submitted its latest counter-proposal through Pakistan. Trump read it and posted on Truth Social. I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable. 2 hours later, Iran has been playing games with the United States and the rest of the world for 47 years. They will be laughing no longer. Let's talk about what this means for you, because this isn't just foreign policy, it's your bank account. The World Bank issued a report on April 28th. Here are the numbers. Global energy prices projected to surge 24% this year, highest since 2022. Brent crude oil forecast to average $86 a barrel in 2026, up from $69 in 2025. In a worst-case scenario where disruptions continue, $115 a barrel. Overall commodity prices, food, metals, energy, up 16% this year. Developing nations could see inflation hit 5.8%, the highest in a decade. The World Bank's chief economist said, "The war is hitting the global economy in cumulative waves, first through higher energy prices, then higher food prices, and finally higher inflation, which will push up interest rates and make debt even more expensive." And he added something that should hit home for every American. The poorest people who spend the highest share of their income on food and fuels will be hit the hardest. Here's the direct American impact. Even under the best-case scenario, Hormuz reopens in 1 quarter. Economists at the Dallas Federal Reserve Project U.S. headline inflation rises by 0.6 percentage points. Core inflation up 0.2 points. That's not nothing when the Fed is trying to manage rates. Trump's National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett went on Fox News and admitted Americans will face higher costs in the short run. He promised a gusher of oil once the Strait reopens. But then Trump himself, asked how much Americans' financial pain was driving him to make a deal, said, "Not even a little bit. I don't think about Americans' financial situation." Vance tried to walk it back the next day. But the math is the math. The U.S. war in Iran has cost $29 billion so far. Gas prices spiked 30%, and the Strait is still only partially open. Here's why this conflict is bigger than just Iran and America. Pakistan is the mediator, which is fascinating because Pakistan and India are in their own conflict right now. Pakistan's prime minister declared emergency austerity measures, a 4-day work week for government offices, schools closed for 2 weeks, all to conserve fuel because of the oil crisis. China is arguably the most important player who's not fighting. Trump is meeting Xi Jinping this week, and regional analysts told CNN that the Iran talks are unlikely to make significant progress until after that meeting. China has economic ties with Iran and doesn't want permanent U.S. dominance over the Strait of Hormuz. Beijing's leverage here is real. Russia. Iran's foreign minister met with Russian officials in St. Petersburg. Russia wants chaos in energy markets to keep oil prices high. Their interests are complicated. Saudi Arabia and Egypt are running back-channel diplomacy. They want the Strait open. Their economies depend on it. But they also want Iran defanged. They're walking a tightrope. Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu made a secret trip to the UAE and called it a historic breakthrough in relations. He also told CBS he wants to reduce U.S. military aid to Israel from $3.8 billion to zero, trying to show strategic independence. And here's the scenario that terrifies every analyst. The expert at the Times of Israel warned that this war, which was launched to prevent Iranian nukes, might actually accelerate them. Iran still has 440 kilotons of highly enriched uranium underground at Isfahan. Natanz is damaged but not destroyed, and a cornered, humiliated regime with a new, hardline supreme leader, backed by the IRGC, may decide the only true deterrent is a nuclear weapon. That's the nightmare scenario. And nobody in Washington has a clean answer to it. The ceasefire technically exists, but Trump said it's on massive life support. Trump's aides are telling CNN he is more seriously considering resuming major combat than at any point since the truce began. Iran's foreign ministry says the U.S. has unreasonable demands, and their counter-proposal was reasonable and generous. An advisor to the new supreme leader warned Trump directly, "We defeated you on the battlefield. Never think you will emerge victorious in diplomacy as well." The nuclear deadlock is total. U.S. demands zero enrichment. Iran says it's a sovereign right. No middle ground in sight. The U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports remains in place, cutting off Iran's oil exports. The Strait of Hormuz is partially open, but restricted. Both sides have fired shots there since the ceasefire. Trump said he has the best plan ever to end the war, but hasn't disclosed it publicly. The Trump-Xi meeting is the next major pivot point. China's role could be decisive. The U.S. is simultaneously deploying additional Marines and airborne units to the region, a classic talk but prepare to fight posture. Iran has carried out 190 executions in 2026, intensifying internal crackdowns as external pressure mounts. The situation is genuinely volatile. It could move toward a deal, or it could tip back into full-scale war. Nobody, not analysts, not intelligence agencies, not the people inside these negotiations, knows which way it goes. So, what actually comes next? There are three realistic scenarios. Scenario 1. A deal gets made. The most likely path to a deal runs through China. If Xi Jinping privately tells Iran to compromise and tells Trump he'll help enforce a deal, both sides have cover to back down. Iran gets sanctions relief and an end to the blockade. The U.S. gets verifiable limits on the nuclear program, and Hormuz reopens. Nobody gets everything they want. The war ends formally. Impact. Oil prices drop sharply. Markets stabilize. Inflation eases. Trump claims victory. Iran's regime survives, weakened but intact. Scenario 2. Frozen conflict. The ceasefire holds barely, but real negotiations go nowhere. Both sides keep probing. Iran launches drone attacks on Iraq. The U.S. maintains its blockade. Israel keeps hitting Lebanon. The Strait stays partially open. Oil prices stay elevated but not spiking. This could go on for months or years. Think a Cold War inside a hot region. Impact, slow economic drag, continued inflation pressure, prolonged uncertainty for markets and consumers. Scenario 3, the war restarts. Trump gives the order. Project Freedom Phase 2 launches. This time, Trump promises it'll be much more severe. Iran responds with everything it has, closing the Strait completely, hitting Gulf infrastructure, potentially going after U.S. forces directly. Oil spikes above $115 a barrel. The global economy takes a serious hit. And if Iran decides the only deterrent that actually works is a nuclear weapon, the entire calculus of Middle East security changes forever. Impact. Severe economic shock. Potential recession. A conflict with no clear endpoint. Look, I'm not going to tell you what to think about this war. That's not my job. My job is to make sure you actually understand what's happening in the world, with real facts from real sources, so you can make up your own mind. What I will say is this. This is not a story that ends anytime soon. And the outcome of these negotiations will affect your gas prices, your economy, and American foreign policy for years. I'll be covering every major development as it happens. If this video gave you something real, hit like. It genuinely helps more people find this content. Subscribe, because the next update is coming and you don't want to miss it. And drop a comment right now. Do you think Trump makes a deal with Iran, or does the war restart? I want to know what you think. I read every comment. See you in the next one.